Hello, I'm Mike Nettleship, and this is the second part of a 6-part video about how I made this guitar. If you haven't already seen the first part, why not subscribe and watch the first part first, otherwise just carry on. I hope you like it. If you do, at the end, please give me the thumbs up. So here we have the pieces with the mahogany glued to them. I did this yesterday, so they've had lots of time to set nice and hard. And as I mentioned before, I made the mahogany strip slightly wider than the oak so that it would have a little lip on each side, as you can see. If I made them too small, I was stuck. I'd have to throw them away, so it's better to make them a bit too big so I can finish them off to the exact size. Now I could plane this down, but that runs a risk of the edge of the blade cutting into the oak, which would be a heck of a problem, because then I'd have to smooth that out or reduce the thickness of the oak to get down to the depth of the cut. So that creates problems, and that's why I made them a bit too big. So now I've got to get rid of that edge. What I'm going to use is not the plane, as I say, but a router cutter, and I'm using this router cutter. It could do with that cutting blade being just a little bit bigger, but it doesn't matter because I can just move the blade up and down as I'm working it. Reset the height, should I say. And what we've got here is one with a bearing. It's an edge trimmer, and it's got the bearing at the bottom rather than at the router end, so it sits in the router like that. And if I can just show you how it's going to work, I'll be holding it like that with the router above, so the router's above here, and I'll position it so that the bearing is on the oak, and when the bearing is on the oak, as it spins, it will cut the edge of the mahogany off. The bearing will roll along the oak and cut off that edge that's sticking out on the mahogany. So that's the next move, and I'm going to do that outside because whenever the English weather allows me, I prefer to work outside so that I don't make a terrible mess of my workbench in my very tiny 9-foot by 9-foot workshop. Apart from a workshop, it's other things, so I like to keep it as clean as possible. So today we're going to do this outside, and I'll come back and show you what it looks like when I've finished it. That's completed the routing. I've managed to cut that down so that it's nice and smooth, and I've just sanded it over. It's quite smooth, but just a little bit of roughness in the grain there where it's been cut against the grain, so I'll have to just do something about that when I'm finishing it off. But that's good. Both pieces are done now. So now I'm going to cut the shape out of each separate piece. I'm not going to wait till I've glued it, because it would be just a bigger thing to manoeuvre about in my bench top bandsaw. So you can see I've already drawn the lines on. I'm going to go in the garage now and tack it with the bandsaw. That's the bandsaw and the bodywork done, and it's beginning to look like a guitar. So on with the next stage. Okay, now so it's now cut to shape. I've just been messing about here, putting a couple of the fittings on to see how they fit, and there's something that I should point out to you. When you can probably see here the bridge and the bridge pickup, I'll just zoom in a little bit on that. Right, now when I was drilling the holes, cutting the holes out, I'd already marked them up, and I cut the holes out for these, and I didn't actually realise that they wouldn't line up properly. So what I did was, let me just take this out. trying to be nice and neat and tidy, when I marked it up, I put the bridge bang in the centre. You can't see that there, can you? There we are. Bang in the centre so that it was equidistant on both sides, and cut the hole out like that so that it was in the middle. But what I've realised, now that I've just been trying it, is that it doesn't line up with the pickups, because when you put the pickup in, if you put the bridge bang in the centre, then I'm not really doing a very good job of this, am I? What I'm trying to say is, if the bridge is bang in the centre, then the strings won't cross the screws. They'll be a little bit out. And in actual fact, you have to have the bridge to the right, further to the right than centre, so that you get the strings lining up over the screws. So I've now widened that hole. Fortunately, I was able to cut it further that way without this end showing when I put the bridge back in. So it's now going to sit like that, and the strings will be in line over the screws. Okay, so there's a couple more jobs I need to do before I glue it all together. I've now got, actually I've just got in the last couple of days, the control panel switch. I'll just zoom out again a bit. No, out. Come on, you fool. Right. Got this nice gold plated switch panel to put on, and I've juggled about and decided to put it at an angle just there. So from that, so I've now got to route this out a square or an oblong for that to sit in, and I've got to make a hole for the guitar jack to plug into there. So the hole has got to be down here somewhere, and I've decided to put it just there. I've already drilled lots of things out here. I've just drilled this hole out here, but I haven't quite finished it. Now you can see that I've cut out the slot for the control panel to go in, and that fits in nicely, and I've also drilled the hole for the jack socket to go into. I've also done something at the back here. I've cut this out for the springs to go in the back, and I found out I'd made another little bit of a mistake. In my enthusiasm to make this as light as possible, when I was drilling as much wood out as I could, I drilled it out all the way through just there, not realising that when it came to the back and I put the springs in, I hadn't got anything to put the screws into to screw the spring plate into the wood. There was just a big hole, but no problem. I've just got a piece of beech which I'm going to be making the neck out of, and I've cut it to size. It's quite a tight fit, put some glue on it, pushed it in. But what I did was, before I did that, I pre-drilled the holes for those screws, because beech is a very hard wood. Like oak, it's almost impossible to put screws straight into the wood without first drilling a hole. And if I'd have just put the beech in there and then tried to drill the screws in, it would have been very difficult. So I used a pillar drill, and I drilled 2 holes in there at a slight angle, because the other thing is that if I put the holes in horizontally, perfectly square into that, then when I was trying to screw them in, the screwdriver would be at an angle like so, but the screws would be going straight in. So that means that the screwdriver is probably going to slip out of the screw heads and make a mess, and maybe I couldn't even tighten it up. So I put those screw slots, holes, at just a slight angle, so when I put the screws in, it's easy to get the screwdriver into it. And that's quite a lot of that done. I'm just going to start doing a little bit of shaping now to cut some out so that it fits nicely into your body rather than the edge sticking into you. And I'm going to do that outside because it's a nice day out there. So, okay, I'll go ahead with that now. After a couple of minutes of that, I decided it was a bit too much hard work, so I've got a power tool on the job now. Goggles on. That is so much easier. So I think I'm going to carry on like this. When I clamp this piece of oak into the vise, to protect the oak, although it is hard wood, I put a piece of softwood down either side, so the workmate is actually clamping onto the softwood, and it'll protect that from marking. Now I've just cut this on the bandsaw and it's pretty rough. I've just had a go at it, but what I do to start with is I'm never going to get it perfectly in shape with the bandsaw. So first of all I use a rasp, which is a pretty rough file. It's usually flat on one side and it's curved on the other side for getting into those hollows. So I'll start by taking off the heavy sharp points with the file, but it does cut very deep grooves, so you have to be careful with it. So I'll take the really rough top bit to shape it with this rasp, and then I'll use a smaller flat file with a finer cutting edges on and make it a little bit smoother. And then I might use the belt sander. This is the belt sander, so called because the sanding belt goes round and round in a certain oval motion, and that takes off quite a bit. It's quite meaty in that it's got a rough sandpaper on, and you have to be a little bit careful with that, but it's okay if the wood's rough. And then after that I may use the orbital sander, which looks a bit the same, but instead of the belt, this being a belt and going round, that's just a piece fixed on, and it actually moves in a circular motion, so it doesn't take as much off and it's better for getting a finer finish. After that I'll probably use some finer sandpaper, but meanwhile let's get started with the rasp and get it a bit to shape before I go on to the finer file. Of course, as it goes down, if you press on less, then it won't take quite as much off, so that's the best thing to do. I've nearly finished the sanding, but there's no point in making it absolutely perfect. This time I'm going to cut some of this off, and to do this I'm going to use this tool, which is called a spoke shave, and it has a blade in there. It's a little bit like a plane, but it's made so that you can actually cut curves like so. So I'm going to shave some of this edge off now so that it'll bring the grain out a bit more down the side there. I'm back inside today because it's raining outside. So last time you saw me doing this edge, and I've now chamfered it down a bit so that it's not a sharp edge, and I've just done that not to any particular measurements, but just so that I thought it was what I wanted. But of course when you do something like that, it never works out dead right. So after doing what I thought was right, I then had to look down the edge and see if it was all parallel with the other side, you know, and file that till it was okay. And then when you get to this piece here, what I found was that parts of it were wider across there than the other parts. So I've got to try and get that even, just the best I can. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but I always like to do it as best I can. So I'm using this little tool to measure it. Now this is a dead handy tool, I don't know what they call it, but a handy tool, that's a good name for it. What it does is measures the inside and outside of things. So with those two prongs there, you measure the inside. So let's say you wanted to know the diameter of a pipe. You push those down inside the pipe, open it out till it reaches the end, each end of the pipe, each side, and then read off on the scale and it tells you what the diameter is. Similarly, if you want to measure the outside of the pipe, you close that on the outside of the pipe, measure it off, and it tells you what the outside is. Well, I'm not measuring pipes today, but I can use this thing. So what I'm going to do is use the two spiky bits. I'm going to put the wood on there, find the put it that way, doesn't make any difference really. Find the thickest part and just slide that so that it's there's one on the edge, one on there, and then if I move that round to that edge, I see that that's a little bit short, so I put a pencil mark there. I've already done that in rehearsals. Put a pencil mark there, and I put a pencil mark at that side because that's also short, and now I'm going to get the file and level that bit out before I get to the next stage, which we'll be doing the other side. Notice that once again when I've clamped this into the vise, you can't see it at that side. Well, in fact I haven't done it to that side because it's on the mahogany and it's going to be on the inside of the wood when I glue it, so it doesn't matter. But on this side I've just put a little piece of MDF to stop the clamp putting in little dents in the wood, and here I've just stuck an old brush which is not very secure anyway, but it's quite tight, so now I'm going to start chamfering this edge. When I'm doing this edge, I'm careful that I don't drop the file too low and catch this edge, or if I take a piece out of that edge, I've got to start going all the way along there again to straighten that out. There you are, that's nice and smooth. Not perfectly smooth because it's all got to be finished, but it's nice and even and I'm quite happy with that, as you can see. And it's brought the edge of the grain out there, just cutting it across like that. So it's brought that nice grain out, which is what I was after, just round there. So now we're going to do the other side. Now this is the trickier one because as near as we can get, I've got to make this side match this side. So I've already marked it out and I've used the little tool that I showed you before. And what I did was, if I can show you, this, like this, that's the best way. Maybe just move that, put that there. Okay, now, I got a straight edge and stood the straight edge up at the side of the guitar body, got the little tool here, and I put it on there so that one of those little edges was up against the ruler like that, and then pushed the other edge to the edge of the chamfer like so. And so now I've got a rough idea, well, pretty accurate idea of what the angle of that is. So now if I move it over to this side, put it on the edge, put a little mark there, put a little mark there, and then drawing it around is quite easy. You just use a little technique whereby you hold the pencil in your finger and just hold it away like so, press it hard against your finger and then just slide it around the wood and it'll draw a line like so. Dead simple. And so then I do the same with the other side. Put the ruler on the top, measure that distance from there to there, mark it on there and draw an arc there. So now when I cut that off, you can probably see from the line on the wood there, when I cut it off the chamfers should be pretty well near the same. So I'm now going to do that. This time I'm using a different tool. I haven't used this one before. I've ordered it off the internet, and it's a tool I used to have when I was younger, but I haven't used one for quite a long time. So I thought it would be a good idea for this, and it's a Surfhorn. I think that's what they call them, or have they got a new name for them? Used to be called a Surfhorn. What does it say on the receipt? Surfhorn, yes, Surfhorn with an M, not an N. Surfhorn. And this tool has got lots of little blades in there, so I thought I'd give it a try because it might be less savage than the file I was using, that rough file I was using. So I'll just set it up and then I'll have a little go at that. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button right here so you can watch my other videos.